What's the trashiest wedding you've been to? Wedding was in a suburban driveway. The maid of honor stole the bouquet from someone's garden and the best man proudly announced he had shoplifted the rings. The groom wore a button-down shirt that said backquote asterisk 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 off in fancy lettering. The bride stopped in the middle of the vows to tell her mother to backquote, get that asterisk 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 kid out of here. It was her second kid by the previous bloke. It was over. We apologized to the celebrant. He said he'd seen worse. A wedding on the beach behind Hooters. The officiant stood next to a trash bin. As if it was planned, the trash collector pulled up during the vows. Did he wait to change the bag? Absolutely not. Children at the wedding swarmed the couple like the flies around the trash can just after the kiss, stepping all over her dress. She bent over to adjust her sandal and a pack of Marlboro Reds fell out of the bust along with her right breast. It felt like we were rubbernecking instead witnessing a marriage. I was actually the bartender, but it was a hoot first. Wedding was outside, and it stormed violently. Groom was hammered pre-wedding. On all the bartenders. The DJ got hammered, made lewd comments to women in the microphone. Then basically everyone was hammered, knocked over the wedding cake which also happened to be a table with many candles, so the place caught on fire. Good times. Often wonder how that marriage worked out. The bride made a speech thanking her in-laws for financial assistance for the event. Her mother was not thanked, and she was furious. There was a long head table for bridal party and parents. It was made out of small tables pushed together covered by one long tablecloth. The mother pulled a small table out of the arrangement, catching the tablecloth and nearly destroying the head table setup. Now the bride got angry and there was much back and forth with various family members attempting to make peace. The mother refused to push back her table and began to invite others to sit with her, all people who were not meant to be seated at the front. Mother of bride continued to sit there and talk asterisk 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 about her daughter, the bride, to anyone who would listen. Hoo boy, this is my time to shine. So my uncle was a preacher, but also owned a restaurant. A 16-year-old got married to her 17-year-old boyfriend in the back room. Her name was Candy. After the ceremony she opened her wedding gifts like it was her birthday. One of the waitresses, Brenda, had given her old lingerie as a gift. I remember during the reception, Candy went out back to throw the lingerie into a dumpster while Brenda sang These Boots Were Made for Walking on karaoke. For their honeymoon, her mom bought them a room at the Holiday Inn around the corner, but they got bored, so they came home. I once worked a wedding where come time for the first dance no one could find the groom. Turns out, he went to the resort's shooting barn to shoot clay pigeons. Upon learning this news, the bride reacted by cursing up a storm on the dance floor. Surely that video of the bride walking down the backyard aisle while dirty dancing to her own asterisk 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 recorded cover of Crazy Bitch has got to be up around here somewhere. Ceremony was in a park, not booked or decorated, just showed up and found a spot. Reception was at a scout hall. No decorations again, and for catering the bride's family went through Red Rooster drive-thru and got a bunch of whole chickens and chips. Like, 5 different cars went through one after the other and ordered. They didn't even pre-order. Groom and all his friends were high as kites and only reason bride wasn't is because she announced she was knocked up. Groom and his mates bought their dirt bikes and after eating went out and rode them around the hall. Was so loud and muddy. Both of my middle sister's weddings. Don't get me wrong, she's the sane one of my sisters and I actually really love her, but she has a, shall we say, unique sense of style. Wedding #1 was, while she was working as a Connie, was held after closing time on the Midway at some podunk county fair. I may well have been the only sober person there, and there were definitely more tattoos than teeth in attendance. She wound up leaving him when he turned out to be an abusive self-centered twat who contributed nothing to taking care of their kid. Wedding #2, just last year, was mostly okay, and as a really stand-up guy. But y'all, The whole wedding theme was camo. My sister wore a camouflaged wedding dress and matching CROCS asterisk. Bill wore jeans and a dress shirt with a camo vest. The frigging cake was covered in camo patterned ribbons and IDK where the hell she got camo patterned silk roses, but the cake had a pile of those too. There were no tables and chairs. Like none. They had an open bar, but no asterisk chairs. Everyone had to put their drink on the ground and hold their plate to eat. It was asterisk crazy. Everyone just assumed that some sort of terrible thing happened where the tables and chair people didn't bring them, but afterwards I asked her, the bride, what happened and she just said, oh, we would have had to pay extra for that. Probably my dad's second marriage. Along the banks of a river with trailer homes in the background. He's wearing a tuxedo shirt and rainbow mirror sunglasses. The ceremony took place at noon. He'd been drinking since 5 AM. I had to walk one of the bridesmaids down a flight of steps as she was legally blind. Someone asked me if I was going to bang her *SIGHS asterisk. I went to a wedding and a funeral home once. Drove by it 3 times before realizing that was in fact the correct address for the venue. Reception and ceremony were there. Completely dry wedding too. A family member was at a wedding where the groom's mother was feeding Pakistani sweets to the bride. She dropped one on her expensive wedding dress. They can be sticky and messy, and the bride says, "You ruined my wedding dress, you bitch." Groom tells his wife-to-be to apologize. She refused, so the groom tells her she's getting divorced and leaves with his family. Everyone else start leaving too. They had signed the wedding papers a day before. At my aunt's wedding with her new husband, I got drugged by one of her stepsons, almost got raped. Luckily one of my real cousins noticed I was gone for a long time and looked for me. He's the only one in the family who knew about my anxiety, so he worried about that. Caught the guy taking my shirt off by the kitchen counter while I was half unconscious. He called the police and I was taken home safely. Camo print wedding dress that was borderline see-through. Walked down the aisle to the Scooby-Doo theme. No, nobody knows why they chose that song, including the couple themselves. They divorced a few months later after they both stopped cleaning the house in an act of defiance against one another. I don't even know where to begin. Ceremony was comprised of immediate family, then followed by a reception with all guests in a relatively nice hotel banquet hall. An hour in at 7 PM the open bar was completely closed down because multiple guests were throwing up in the bathroom sinks causing flooding. The groom was so wasted even before the ceremony, but was blackout by the time of reception. During the first dance he kept his hands in his cargo pant khakis the entire time and ate dinner sitting on the floor in a corner of the hall while the bride sat at the head table alone. About 2 hours in, the groom randomly left and slept at their house while the bride stayed in the new Liwat suite by herself. They are now separated, as you may have assumed by this point. A family member of mine's second wedding reception was held inside a indoor gun range. The groom was obviously an avid hunter because the entire wedding party was wearing camouflage suits, and the bonus was the open bar consisting onto kegs of Coors Light sitting trash cans filled with ice. The bride and her sisters did a striptease/lap dance on the groom immediately following dinner. In front of his grandmother. It was in the middle of absolutely nowhere. It was a 5 PM wedding, and there was no food served, and we couldn't just run out and get McDonald's or something because there was nothing around. We had to help set up tables. We had to fill out our own thank you cards. They even had an example for us to follow. Thank you for the blank. We'll use it to blank. Then, they asked us to help take down the tables as well. I refused to help and got the hell out of there. Also, a cake. A 2 friends from college wedding was just awkward. Bride sewed her own dress which was a size too big. She's really slim and tiny, so she looked like she had a very conservative satin nightgown on that was a rush job. The first kiss was at the altar. When they finished the pastor said, "AWW, come on, you can do better than that." During part of the ceremony there was parents' blessing. Groom's family was quick and private, really sweet. Bride's parents were loud, and they bawled while talking for 15 minutes each. Reception was potluck, and not enough food for those attending. Wedding colors were baby blue and lavender. A mutual friend was DJ and the mother of the bride passed him a note to read aloud to the guests. Poor guy then had to go. Groom, your mill says you can pet the kitties now. The previous spring break mill had gotten bride a baggy standard sized shirt with kittens on it. Kittens just so happened to be about bust height. I offered to do flowers, boutonnieres, corsages, centerpieces, but the wedding party didn't store them as I had suggested, so the next day they were wilted and really sad. Did I mention this was a dry wedding? I was staying at a really massive hotel about a decade ago, and a group of what I can only describe as rough-looking hippies were having a wedding reception in the ballroom. I was sitting at the bar ready to order when one of the groomsmen invited me to eat and drink. They apparently had too much food and alcohol. Of course, I obliged. The alcohol and food. Why not? When I walked in the ballroom all I could smell was body odor mixed with a hint of food. It was so damn hot in that room. Some of them weren't wearing shirts, male and female alike, and almost none of them had on shoes. Only a handful of people were dressed somewhat casually. It was just humid, sweaty, and warm in there. When I say rough looking hippies, just picture that stereotype in your head, and I asterisk you not, that's how most of them looked. Instead of a DJ they had a dude on the stage with drums, bongos, a guitar, a rain stick, and I'm pretty sure a didgeridoo. I didn't want to be rude so all I grabbed was grilled asparagus, and then I left as soon as the guy walked out of sight. It was so disgusting in there. The next morning I noticed they had cordoned off the ballroom area, and they had a good portion of their housekeeping staff stacking trash bags into those rolling garbage bins. I felt so bad for them. I went to a wedding that had a Matrix theme. The groomsmen all wore floor-length leather jackets and tiny sunglasses. The MC made a slideshow of images from the movie with the groomsmen's faces badly photoshopped on. They insisted on calling each other Neo and Morpheus while high-fiving each other. It was painful. There's a lot of tension at the wedding, and it turned out that the groom had cheated on the bride a few weeks earlier, but she had still decided to marry him. His family was really trashy and took the view that their son had cheated because the bride wasn't good enough for him. The bride's family was not trashy, but pissed that she took him back and obviously hated the groom and his **** family. The sister was the maid of honor and her speech was very sarcastic, just so glad to welcome you to the family, Greg, but it went over the heads of the groom's relatives. Everyone who knew the story was cringing. The groom's dad was loaded. He stood up and told a long and convoluted story about a wife giving teaspoons of sugar to God, which made no sense and seemed to have very sexist undertones. They cut quickly to the music and the drunk groom's father hit the dance floor and started grinding with some woman who wasn't his wife. His wife sees and has her **** fit and starts screaming at him. They won't stop fighting, so they cut the music and have the four-piece high school band play classical music badly. Includes a squeaky clarinet. Like a terrible foreshadowing from above, it starts pissing with rain and people start trying to politely leave. Last thing I see is the groomsmen running to their cars with their trench coats folded up over their heads to protect their tiny sunglasses while the band plays a squeaky Matrix theme song. It was amazing. Probably going to get buried, but went to a fancy wedding at a beautiful venue. It was an incredible outdoor ceremony, with the reception inside a super fancy lakefront venue. All went well, until the bride's dad stood up to give a toast. Bride's dad and her mother had been divorced since she was little, so at least 25 to 26 years they've been divorced. The bride's side of the family is very well off, and with about 200 people in attendance he essentially roasted the bride's mother for 10 to 15 minutes. He was talking about how she used to **** the tennis instructor he paid for. Then he went down the list naming the guy she dated after him, how she couldn't hold a job and just used his money. Dom had her current husband there, and then he turned his attention to that guy and was roasting on him for being the flavor of the week and how he won't be around when his daughter is back from her honeymoon. He then moved on back to the mother and really laid into her again. I mean, he was off the rails. It was like a Comedy Central roast of the bride's mom, but fueled by his apparent hatred for her. I had been drinking a lot, so at first I thought I was mishearing things, but the longer it went on I was sure I wasn't. I have no idea how no one stopped this, but they literally let him go on until he was done uninterrupted. He did not mention his daughter or the groom once. He just roasted his ex-wife the whole time. They met and married within months. He was 40s, she was upper 20s, or low 30s. I was shocked she was getting married, shocked *THIS* was the guy, and shocked that I was invited. Felt like I had to go. He had like 3 preteens that did whatever they wanted and lived in the backwoods. Wedding was at his cabin/property, potluck style. When was just them standing in the yard. No seating, no grouping of friends or families or sides of an aisle, just hang out and watch them do their thing. No photographer. When they kissed, everyone pulled out guns and shot them off. I hadn't noticed the guns or seen that anyone was carrying, so it was a shock. Then the happy couple rode off on an ATV into the woods for a victory lap. They came back, and we all ate swamp people food and everyone was sloshed. Left early with a friend, and on the drive home we were like, so, what the *** was that? They obviously divorced shortly after. A friend's wedding. She was walking down the aisle, and had to pause to put out her cigarette. It was a small wedding, and her friends thought it was hilarious. Married less than 2 years. She married him because he was in the military, and she thought she was getting cash for life. He chose deployment to a war zone over staying with her. Ooh, I've got one of these, but it was a fake wedding, unknown to the guests ahead of time. Many of the details are things we found out later. So, the wedding. Everything felt very tense, and groom looked like he might cry standing at the altar. Bride entered in a dress that didn't fit properly. It had a large long skirt with hoop, but the dress was too short and the hoop was too big, so it sat up on an angle and bounced around awkwardly as she moved. The ceremony itself seemed quite strained, and having recently been married ourselves, the wife and I noticed that the celebrant didn't say the specific line legally required for a wedding in Australia, and no paperwork was signed, also required in Australia. At the reception, almost all of table 1, which had bride/groom's families, turned out it was groom's family that left immediately after the reception started. Groom's dad was meant to pay for the bar tab, but did not do so before leaving. Bride and groom avoided each other apart from an incredibly awkward first dance. They separated weeks later. So, flashing back a bit. Bride and groom were quite young, but bride several years older than groom. They'd been dating for a while, and a lot of people in our circle of friends had been getting married. Bride was very set on marriage, and groom proposed willingly. As time went on, groom was getting cold feet. He didn't want to break up with bride, or even necessarily to call off the engagement, but wasn't ready to be married. Bride was not pleased, and pressured groom to continue. Groom's parents were in very poor health at the time, and when groom tried to say he wasn't ready again, bride started to harass his parents about him trying to back out. Groom foolishly agreed to go ahead with the wedding in order to stop this harassment. Bride was still not happy with groom's attitude and asked the celebrant to come talk to them, hoping he would talk groom around. Celebrant, being an absolute legend and really just doing his job properly, refused to marry them once he was told that one party was unwilling, offering the compromise that he could officiate a commitment ceremony which is not legally binding. Bride took him up on this offer, but insisted on not telling anyone and pretending it was a proper wedding in Australia. Some paperwork needs to be filed 30 days in advance, so there was no time to get an alternative celebrant, and there were evidently a lot of deposits which were not refundable, so close to the event. Everyone got super drunk before wedding starts, even groom throw up on the stage, while bride is hardly walk straight to him with drunk AF face. Come and think of it, maybe funniest one. Ooh, I've got one. Okay, so the bride was my older cousin. We were all from the Midwest, but she's been living with her family in a small town in the SE. Approximately 20 to 30 family members flew/drive in from out of state, 1/2 way across the country. This was going to be her first marriage, to a man that was not the father of any of her 4 children, each different fathers. This was the middle of summer, the American Southeast, so hot and muggy. To skip forward a bit, there was no air conditioning at the family home, the motel, the church, or the reception hall. So everyone was sweating in their nice clothes the whole time. I'll start by our motel. Some of the parents were going to have their own rooms, and the kids and 2 older kids were going to be in their own room. The first thing that happens is that the kids get locked in the room. A previous tenant had bashed in the doorknob, so they couldn't open the door once it closed behind them. We tried picking up the phone to call the front desk, but the phone's cord and jack had been ripped out of the wall. Some of the younger kids were freaking out because of all of the palmetto bugs flying around the room. Motel staff ended up breaking the window because the window was painted shut, and then never offered to move the children into another room until we asked for it. When we got together at the bride's parents' home, the bride's dad, my uncle, and amusingly my godfather, never got up from his recliner, even though we hadn't seen him in more than 10 years, where he was watching VHS tapes of late 80s WrestleMania. He had an apple box next to the sofa heaping full with empty Miller High Life cans. First, we found out that 2 of the groomsmen couldn't attend the wedding because they were arrested for cocaine distribution. So, one of my older cousins was recruited to replace one of them because he was about the same size, so he could fit in the rented suit. We then found out that 2 of the bridesmaids couldn't attend the wedding because they couldn't get the day of work from the Kmart. So since we were already down 1 groomsman, we only needed 1 replacement bridesmaid. The trouble was, nobody would fit the rented dress. So one of my cousins was recruited to stand with the bridesmaids, with the dress draper over her shoulder. We get to the actual ceremony, and it turned out nobody bought a unity candle to light turning the ceremony. So the minister sent his wife to Kmart to pick up a $1 plain white candle. The ceremony started before she got back, and paused for a very long feeling 10-ish minutes, until she came back with a candle. The bride's flow bouquet was a very fake looking potted sunflower. After the ceremony, we went to the reception. There were not going to be any beverages provided until the bride's mom, my aunt, my dad's sister, this will be important later, used their refrigerator rent money, they didn't own their fridge, to buy a couple of cases of Sprite. At the reception, they asked me to be the DJ. They knew I worked at a record store, so they thought I'd be a good DJ, apparently. The groom, last minute, decided he really wanted a limo for the wedding, so they cancelled the DJ they had, and rented a limo. More on this later. To take the DJ's place, they put a boombox up on a table in the corner of the hall, and gave me their CDs. My heart sank when I looked through their CDs, all country, or rap. So I started playing music from the artists I knew, and everything skipped. The CDs were stacked without cases, and people just slid them back and forth across each other when looking through them. Apparently, they also had a party the night before where they got thrown around. Bottom line is, the only 2 CDs that didn't skip were a Lean Rhyme CD and the Dr. Dolittle soundtrack. So, I just switched between those 2 albums. The limo arrived, a 70s looking Cadillac. Smoking. After a few minutes of trying to figure out what was going on, they opened the hood, and there was a fire under the hood. At this point, people are pretty hungry. The bride comes over to thank my parents for the gift, and that food was on the way, and said something like, and there was enough money left over, that I could get these beautiful acrylic nails. As the wedding gift, My parents gave them $150 to use for food, since there wouldn't have been food otherwise. The food arrives. It's one 9x13 aluminum pan of baked beans, and one 9x13 of, fully cooked, but still partly frozen chicken wings from her friend's catering company. The groom's family rushes the food, and took it all. There was zero food left for anyone from the side of the family that traveled 1,000 miles, and actually paid for the food. After about 3 hours of country and rap, my aunts and uncles that have traveled in and are all of German heritage wanted to dance to one polka. So one of my aunts went to their car and they had actually brought along a tape with the song on it. After getting the go ahead from the bride, the song is started, and in seconds, the groom's entire side goes, "Oh, he'll know," and leaves. Every single person. So, now it's just the wedding party and the bride's side of the family left at the reception hall. They had to leave the hall clean, so we all started to pitch in and clean. Meanwhile, everyone notices the bride's dad sitting alone at the bar, drinking his own booze. My dad has always resented him for marrying his sister, and moving the family so far away, to live near the military base he was discharged from, and then basically giving up on life, becoming an alcoholic, and let the family live a really low income life feeding off his disability. Seeing him just sit, while the rest of the family cleaned upset my dad, so he walked over to ask him to help the family clean. Nobody heard what they said to each other, until we heard a crash of a bar stool hitting the floor. We looked over, and my dad's holding him up off the ground by the back of his suit jacket, like holding a puppy by the scruff of its neck. My dad was a bigger guy, worked in a factory for 30 years, an EMT and fireman, grew up a farmer, played high school football, etc., but was a teddy bear in terms of temperament. My uncle/godfather was maybe 120 pounds wet. My dad put him down, pushed the broom up to his chest until he grabbed it, and walked away. My uncle started sweeping, to everyone's shock, having never seen him work a day in his life. After we cleared out and locked up the reception hall, my family went to a KFC for dinner, since we hadn't had anything to eat all day, even after technically paying for lunch. We originally tried Denny's. There was a sign on the door that they were closed, so that the staff could have dinner. When we got back to the motel, there was a message waiting for my dad, asking if he'd, after butchered a snake. One of my aunts/uncles/cousins who traveled in brought their little dog. During the ceremony, it was left behind at the bride's parents' house. It somehow managed to open the rear sliding door and went outside. The back of the property had a narrow waterway running behind it. A large snake had killed, and was trying to swallow, the small dog. Someone killed the snake by bashing its head, and they called my dad, the avid hunter, and former farmer who did have to slaughter the occasional animal, to try to get the dog out of the snake, so it could be buried. He said no. The next day, was gift opening at the bride's parents' home. As they started opening gifts, many of them personalized, they noticed a pattern. Her last name was misspelled on almost every item. It turns out that the friend who offered to print their wedding invitations with their color dot matrix printer as their gift spelled the groom's last name wrong and didn't want to upset the friend and ask her to reprint. So everyone who used the invitation as the guide for how to spell the personalized gift had spelled wrong. In the end, the groom also got arrested and sent to prison for his connection to the same incidents that lead to the two groomsmen's cocaine distribution issues, and marriage was annulled, but the bride kept his last name. Question mark? TL, doctor, lots of baby daddies, sketchy motel, VHS tapes of WrestleMania, a huge box of empty beer cans next to the recliner, can't get time off from Kmart, cocaine arrests, wearing a dress over their arm because it didn't fit, ceremony delayed due to Kmart trip, refreshments paid for with refrigerator rent money, Dr. Dolittle, old limo catches fire, not enough baked beans, and frozen chicken wings. Entire half of the family leaves because they don't like one song, Nearly a fight from brewing decades-long animosity. Den is closed for dinner. Snake eats a family pet. Misspelling on nearly every gift. And finally more cocaine arrests and marriage annulment. Waitress at a Bogan wedding. The night ended with the chef and I rounding up the kids and barricading us all in the kitchen and locking the doors to prevent the melee of fighting adults outside from A, accessing more weapons, some of them bad knives, and B, hurting the kids. They ranged in age from toddlers to preteens. It was just the chef and I, 2 women and a whole bunch of screaming and frightened kids until the police came and carted everyone off to jail. Wedding photographer showed up the next morning for the scheduled photo shoot. I had to tell him he could find the wedding party at the local jail. The chef and I are still friends, but we both quit that place shortly after that epic wedding. I was in Vegas once, and an entire wedding party was throwing hands in the middle of Fremont Street. My friends told me my dog could be my +1 at their wedding. At first I said, "What? No," but they insisted, because Buddy is a great dog and I'm a sad single person. So I put a tie on the dog and we went to a wedding. Had a buddy who was engaging in a marriage we all knew was going to fail. The night before at the bachelor party, we're all sitting around after he went to bed wondering why he was marrying her. She was a rude stuck-up woman who basically bullied him into it, but he's an adult, so we just let him do his thing. We go to the wedding the next day, and there's like 10 people. A buddy is holding the ring in his shaking hands and drops it. When he can't find it, her dad comes up in the middle of the service in his sleeveless t-shirt, a beer in his hands, and sunglasses on and starts yelling at our buddy to find the **** ring. He is literally on his hands and knees combing the grass in front of everyone trying to find this thing. Eventually his fiancée joins in on cussing him out and storms off. Eventually she came back and exclaimed I needed to drink a beer and smoke a cigarette, but I'm fine now. We never found the ring and he just pretended to put it on her finger. They divorced 6 months later. We came clean about our confusion about the marriage, and he said he didn't know why he asked her either. Reception held in, essentially, a metal pole barn. While the DJ plays the wedding classic hits of Whose Bed Have Your Boots Been Under and Who's Cheating Who, the piss poor air conditioning and insulation causes the guests to figuratively melt. Unfortunately, the wedding cake literally melts and the top 2 layers topple onto the floor. The cake is rebuilt into a Franken cake off of bits on the floor by a couple of guests hoping to save the bride trauma. Fortunately only a handful of guests are served this cake before it is replaced with sheet cake. We sat at our school cafeteria style tables and tried to drink away our misery 1 cup of Busch Light at a time, but the hand tap on the keg leaked like crazy, requiring a full body calisthenic workout to squeeze out a cup of foam every few minutes. I was visiting my cousin's sister. She took me to her friend's wedding. A small ceremony with very few people, most of them were family members of bride and groom. The bride's father probably didn't like the groom, started arguing in the middle of the wedding, then started fighting. They were rolling on the ground and punching each other. The bride was in tears and half of the guests were laughing and cheering, and the other half were standing like idiots, me included. Soon they got exhausted and stopped fighting, and after sometimes the wedding continues. My own. In a Mississippi judge's office with a bag of Cheetos on her desk. She wiped her hands on a napkin, grabbed a Bible, and did her thing with orange crumbs on her lips. Her work heels were not on because she was in her office. It was extremely rush. I understand that she was on her break, but we didn't mind waiting. IDK why they rushed us through. I DJ weddings. Nowadays I have my own company, but years ago, I was hired out by another company. This wedding was from them. The cake topper depicted a bride dragging a groom by the scruff of the neck. The groom and his groomsmen were all in baggy ill-fitting suits and dirty running shoes. They at least waited until after the ceremony to put on their, also dirty, baseball caps. At one point there was supposed to be a special dance, but no one could find the groom, so that dance didn't happen. The bridesmaids were drunk enough that they both loved and hated every song I played and expressed this to me as I dropped each tune. I don't take gigs like that anymore. I'm self-conscious. A lot of these weddings sound like my wedding. Took place at my mom's house. Vows took place in the yard. Thrift store dress, and I had a button-up shirt. Reception also occurred in the yard. There was a pig roast and potluck and biob. Almost everyone hot drunk. Wife and I spent our wedding night in a tent, so we wouldn't drink and drive. Half Mormon half not Mormon wedding. The Mormon half was ultra Mormon, the non-Mormon half was a good amount recovering addicts. The mother got her daughter's attention by just standing in front of whatever she was looking at, including the groom, the photographer, the DJ, didn't matter. Ma was also pretty high most of the wedding, 22 people in the bridal party. Only 2 girls were the bridesmaids from before she met the Mormons. They kept getting frustrated because the Mormon bridesmaids kept pulling the bride away from them whenever they saw them all together alone. No alcohol served, so the non-Mormon side went to the liquor store across the street and served their own cakes mash fail and straight into the bride's hair. Mormon side started to talk crap about the drinkers, and so the drinkers tried to pick fights with the Mormons. Wedding ended early, lots of tears. Such a hot mess wedding. The couple are both dentists. Really old friend of my wife's. She hadn't seen her in years, but was invited to her wedding. The guy this chick was marrying was absolute. I studied the blade levels of cringe. He was shirtless, wore black jeans, and his arms were covered in barbed wire tattoos and quotes that you'd find on those idiotic badass skeleton memes where they point guns at you and claim they'll asterisk you up if you hurt anyone I care about kind of asterisk. It was quickly apparent my wife and I were the only ones in attendance that didn't live in a trailer park and practice normal human hygiene. They were roasting what I thought was a suckling pig on a spit. But as it cooked, I noticed bubbling out of its ass and its stomach was swelling. I asked his best man if this was a properly slaughtered pig, and the best man proceeds to regale me with the tale of how he and the groom got faced the night before, climbed into a nearby farm, and stole this pig. They shot it in the head and impaled it with a long piece of rubber, which upon closer inspection was what it was turning on. Just so happens, while we were discussing the groom's recent crime, the pig's stomach exploded. Blood, and guts poured out in enough quantities to put out the fire. Wife and I had already given each other the time for us to do TFO of dodge look before this, but needless to say we beelined for the car and left. We later found out the cops showed up and arrested the groom and his best man once the farmer they stole from realized one of his prized pigs was missing. The groom tried to fight the cops and got tased. He made it easy for them by already being shirtless. Me up. I went to a relative's wedding, and it wasn't that trashy until his wife's brother got drunk and started talking about how they were going to bang a lot during their honeymoon. It was especially weird because they've been together for at least 8 or so years, have kids, and the wife's brother has known that. It wasn't even like he lives far away. They're a close family, as I've been to my relatives' kids' birthday parties. At a park. Pickup trucks with igloo coolers opened on the tailgate were the bar. Everything was served in red Solo cups before the wedding. Everyone got drunk. The bride walked down the aisle drinking from a red Solo cup instead of holding a bouquet. It was essentially a tailgate party with a preacher invited. It was at a Holiday Inn. The groomsmen all wore brightly colored prom vests and jeans. I was a +1 to one of the bridesmaids. I just wore a regular suit, nothing fancy. I was still dressed better than the groom, and I got dirty looks for it. Haven't been to the wedding, was before my time, and in my wife's family, at the reception, somebody decided to play a joke on the groom by pulling his chair when he sat down after greeting the guests. He fell and broke his neck on the chair. Groom's best man went around with a naked photo of the groom. Showed everyone, including the bride and groom's family. The worst part was there were kids at the wedding, including the bride's very young son, and it wasn't a small photo either. Like on his phone it was a huge asterisk canvas of the groom nude. I'm a wedding videographer, so I've seen some things, and while not necessarily trashy, one moment from a 2018 wedding stands out. Bride's dad gets up for his speech, where a 30 minutes long speech plays out recounting embarrassing memories of the bride being generally unathletic, kicking soccer balls to the face, etc. Truly cringe-inducing, and bride was very uncomfortable. He then tells the audience a story of how he used to travel for work, and at the time the bride was obsessed with Disney, Pirates of the Caribbean, and would often make up her own Disney characters, one being a French-speaking bird. She would make personalized cards with poorly drawn Jack Sparrow and French bird characters, and send them to various locations when he was away traveling for work. Cute story, but entirely inappropriate, and far too long for a wedding speech. Finally, he raises his glass for the conclusion of his speech, thank God, and then suddenly, two D-list local actors from the local theater troupe come out from the back door of the venue. Dressed as, you guessed it, Jack Sparrow and a woman in a French hat with wings, our French bird character from earlier. They had come to the wedding to deliver a card, but what plays out is a terribly acted story of how Jack Sparrow had gotten drunk on his journey to the venue, their ship had run aground, and he hitched the French bird lady, who's yelling in French, no one understands what she's saying. The bride is mortified, the groom's mouthing to the bride's mom, to get dad off the stage. This back and forth between Jack Sparrow and the French bird goes on for about 10 minutes, with dad as the jovial in-between mediator, thinking he's crushing this speech the whole time. Finally, Jack Sparrow unfurls the card for the bride and groom, which is a giant poster with a picture of the B&G saying something along the lines of best wishes. Everyone was stunned, both the B&G were so upset. The father/daughter dance after was very uncomfortable afterwards. And I got video of the entire thing. Gonna have to go with my own here. Everything was cheap and immediate family and friends. Guest list of maybe 30 people maximum. Small fun party. My loud, trashy cousin was outraged that her and her 7 kids, drugs do bad things and were not invited, so they badgered my mother, who badgered me to let them attend until I did. Then never showed up to spite me. At my reception people fed me drinks and shots until I was mortal. At midnight someone convinced me to ditch my own wedding reception to go get pizza. 2 AM my husband had to convince me to go home, and I was loud as hell in waking up my neighbors. Spent 2 to 6 AM throwing up, no sexy time. Spent the first day of married life hungover and in the dog house with the mister. So far, it would be the one with my friend, being forced to marry. We were still so young and the guy she was with was way older than us. It was just a wedding without much planning, just the families wanting them to be married, since they've slept with each other. I had one of my friends from high school get married in a trashy way. His fiancée at the time invited him to lunch at Buffalo Wild Wings, and she had also invited the whole family. They were in on it, and once my friend showed up he found out it was a surprise's wedding, just like you would do a surprise birthday party. The even trashier part is they didn't reserve the restaurant or anything, so in his wedding photos, standing in front of the bathrooms by the way, you can see complete strangers coming out of the bathrooms. Oil town off the Gulf Coast of Texas. Biker wedding for a couple that had been together for decades already. Met up with her that morning to help carry a liquor to the venue, which was the local VFW. We're in a parking lot outside some gas station. She's in a tank top, no bra. Her boobs flying all over the place and she could give a crap. She pops open her trunk and hands me 6 Tide containers. Each is full of premixed shots. Okie dokie. Fast forward to the wedding itself. Roll up to the VFW. Bikes everywhere and me in my Honda sedan. Iron slacks and a button down. I'm definitely out of place, but roll with it. Groom is in full patch, at the altar bar, smoking when the bride walks in. She actually did have a dress, but joked about it being the first time she'd worn one in over 20 years. Rowdy as hell reception. Lots of fighting. Cops got called at least once. Groom was taken away in an ambulance because the best man had laced the pot with heroin and didn't tell anyone. Good times down in Freeport. I'm late to the party, but here goes. This took place in my home state of West Virginia. Firstly, it involves my brother and his on-again, off-again girlfriend Crystal. They dated for about 6 years and she cheated on him with a large portion of our friend group. One of the guys she cheated on him with was named Mickey. Another was Philip. My brother found out, and they broke up. Fast forward a few months later, and Crystal and Mickey are getting married. We're all friends, and so we all go to the wedding and reception except for my brother for obvious reasons. As we're all getting plastered, Crystal comes by the table and first remark that I always thought she'd be my sister-in-law someday. She said she thought so too, but my brother didn't intervene at the wedding, which he wasn't at, when the preacher asked if anyone had cause to object. So yeah, she only married Mickey to try and get my brother to do some grand gesture. A bit later, Philip, drunk, accidentally bumps into a young child, knocking him down. The child's father punches Philip in the face. Philip, confused and drunk, gets into his car and drives off. Crystal starts freaking out and crying. Me gets way too drunk and starts throwing up in the bathroom. Mickey's mom starts screaming at a very distraught Crystal to go and take care of him, because that's her job now. Some other stuff happened, but I blacked out. I ran into Crystal a few years later outside of a Walmart. She was very pregnant. She told me her and Mickey got divorced and that she got remarried, but was most likely going to divorce the new guy too. Before I deleted Facebook, I remember her spamming her wall with cheesy memes about true love and commitment. Sometimes I miss West Virginia. In all fairness to my home state, I've attended some very classy weddings as well. This one just happened to be from the more stereotypical Appalachian crowd. Bride jumped onto a table and did a full striptease. I didn't attend, but my mum told me that my second cousin took off her wedding dress and got changed purely so she could have a fight at her own wedding. A coworker of mine got married in her driveway. On the invitation it said that everyone had to wear the color purple, and they served KFC and Hostess cupcakes for dessert. Music was a boombox with the local light rock station playing. The worst part was that she let her dogs crap all over the driveway during the reception, so no one ever picked up the poop. We all just kinda weirdly hopped around it in a variety of purple hues. The bride had a little too much to drink. She was on her hands and knees throwing up on the front lawn of the reception hall while people were arriving. I got married at a drive-thru in Las Vegas. The only photo I still had my seatbelt on. Just attended a wedding with my who only knew the bride because they'd met on a dating website before he met me, had only met in person once prior to the wedding, and had remained friends on social media for several years. She said he was one of her best friends. There were very few guests at the wedding and he and I were the bride's only guests besides her parents, and the rest were the groom's family. We were also one of the only ones to bring a gift, a very nice bottle of bourbon, and my had to keep dodging the question of how they knew each other. The wedding itself was actually pretty cute and intimate, and the bride and groom were very nice people, and I talked to the groom and his friends quite a bit, and had a great time. I just couldn't wrap my mind around *WHY* my and I were even invited. It was weird to me, not from a place of jealousy. I just couldn't understand why the bride didn't have better friends to invite than a Tinder swipe from 8 years ago. I was a wedding DJ 4 years and I've seen a few things. Guests throwing up, trashy dancing, but the one that takes the cake is a full brawl that broke out at a very nice country club. This was pre-cell phone, so unfortunately I never got any video of this. The bride's brother and the best man did not like each other already, and to make matters worse, at the head table the bride's brother takes off his tux jacket and shirt *during dinner to reveal his wife beater t-shirt underneath. The best man comes over and reminds him where he is, and the two of them exchange words. There's a little shoving, and the BB is asked to get some air. Things are fine and later BB comes back during the dancing, although at this point he's still not dressed. Whatever, people are dancing and having fun. At the end of the night, B can't find his jacket and starts making some noise about it. He starts calling out BM because he thinks he took it. He's drunk and cursing up a storm and BM is done with him. BM walks up behind BB, taps him on the shoulder, and in the moment BB turns around, BM slugs him. And it begins. Everyone has their beer muscles on at this point and gets in on it. Groomsmen, bridesmaids, the hall manager tries to break it up and gets a stray hand to the face. The bride winds up hitting the deck and going full turtle. She was a larger woman and couldn't get up because of the fit of her dress. It was like watching a tornado that started on one side of the hall and was quickly moving my way. I raced to pack up my equipment ASAP and was getting my gear out to the car just as the police arrived. I didn't stick around to see what happened. I'm quite happy they paid me earlier in the evening. Went to a wedding that used a Pandora music set. Then out of nowhere an ad started blaring after one of the songs. This was also a wedding that had black tie proof ad on the invite. Can't remember the full meal at the reception, which was held in a recreation center, but I cannot forget that the accompaniment was very obviously frozen peas and carrots and the meal was served by children. Like, under 10 years old. An army of little children. Have broken some kind of child labor law there. Groom beat the asterisk out of father-in-law. Father-in-law went to bathroom and died. Groom shot himself in parking lot. This was 25 years ago in Chicago. Crazy wedding. The bride's mom and the best man hooked up before dinner. I worked at a high-end golf club in Seattle that held extravagant weddings on a regular basis. This wedding in Samoa is perhaps my favorite. All of the guys wore lime green vests and snapbacks that matched. As mentioned in the contract, the wedding party must order food from the golf club's restaurant. Instead, they order Domino's, and the pizza delivery man serves them pizza while they sit in a beautiful restaurant. Right before the marriage, the bride and groom had a fist fight, which caused the ceremony to be postponed until bruises could be concealed with cosmetics. A live band was engaged to perform at the event, but they were not fed. The lead vocalist decides to speed down the hill during their first break to fetch a drink. A really cheap, low-rent, real-life wedding reenactment of the Red Wedding from Game of Thrones. It took place at the bride's place of work. It was weird. No one died, fortunately. My own wife and I just wanted to do a justice of the peace thing, with just our son and my mom. My father's dead, and she's estranged from her very toxic parents. There was less than 24 hours left to go, and word spread. We were forced into making something happen, and decisions were taken away from us. So it ended up being at a local dive bar, and while being well-meaning, it was exactly what we didn't want to happen, and was trashy as asterisk. I'm so glad I can share this story again. In my early 20s a childhood friend's sister was getting married. I was friendly with the family and all the siblings, so I agreed to go. When I got the invitation it said on the invitation no gifts please just money. This didn't seem like the bride. She would be fine with either. I then get contacted by bride's mother who tells me to get them a physical gift, because the groom's mother is planning on taking any money they get as compensation for planning the wedding. I get to the venue which is a church, but the wedding is not actually in the main part of the church. It is in the church basement. It's bizarre. It looks like the setup of a high school dance. My friend whose sister is getting married tells me that her sister never got her dress altered, so they had to use safety pins. They walk down the aisle to a Metallica song playing on a boombox. The ceremony was quick thankfully. No alcohol at the wedding. Okay, it's what it is. There was sparkling 99-cent grape juice at each table. No, it was 99 cents because the stickers were left on the bottles. Bride's mother comes over to me and said I wouldn't eat the food. It was actually food that was supposed to be for Meals on Wheels, and some of it was frozen leftovers of food that wasn't used. This was the groom's mother's idea, since she was paying for the wedding. I gave the bride and groom my gift. They said thank you and seemed perfectly happy with getting a physical gift. Groom's mother comes over to me and asks me why I didn't get them cash or a check for a gift. That it said that right on the invitation. I played dumb and said I must have missed that. She was pissed. Lastly, there was a guy there who took a liking to me. He was dressed in a white tank top, backwards hat and sweet pants. You know, some proper wedding attire. He told me he just got out of jail for drugs and that the Bloods and the Crips wanted him in their gangs. I told him that's interesting because he's white and I thought they didn't usually recruit white guys. He said they just really wanted him and that he hung out with black people all the time. He then told me that you could cure AIDS by injecting dish soap. It cleans out the blood. He asked for my phone number. I declined. Shockingly, the marriage only lasted a few years. Groom has full custody of their 2 kids because bride is not capable of taking care of their children. She had social services called on her multiple times. The bride looked like an ogre and behaved like one too, showed her husband the middle finger in front of the guests and called him names. Her relatives looked like the family tree of the hills have eyes and came in sandals. The toenails I've seen that day are etched in my memory, and not even nicer everyday clothes. We had a barbecue in their garden with paper plates and plastic forks. 1 or 2 salads that basically consisted of mayonnaise and noodles and a basket with dry baguette. Their house was a mess. The relatives of the bride gave us major side eyes once they heard that we and 2 other guests of the groom studied at universities. The groom was just an acquaintance of ours, and we haven't seen him in years, but went anyways to the wedding because he was a nice guy. Poor dude got lots of grey hairs since he's with her. Unfortunately, they already have 3 or more kids and all come after their mother. It was like a bad Adam Sandler movie where you looked into the stroller and said, oh my god, we haven't seen him since the wedding. Week before the wedding, the bride and groom tried to get me in for a threesome. Side note, I'm not even really friends with the bride. I'm friends with the bridal party and we all work together, which is how I found myself joining the bachelorette party. I'm also the only one from out of town, so everyone left the hotel after everyone saying they'd stay at the hotel when the party ends, except for me and the bride. She had gotten horny and called her man. I was asleep at that point. The bride and I were in a double queen room. I wake up to the groom to be pestering me to join in. My car keys are missing. Found out later a friend took them because they were worried I'd drive home drunk, which is not something I've ever done, so WTF. And now I can't run away to my car to avoid the bride and groom. They can't convince me to join, so they just start banging it out in the bed next to me. I've never prayed for death so much in my life. The reason they're getting married is because they're asterisk buddies who got pregnant. They decided to start dating around month 6 of the pregnancy, mostly due to the groom dragging his feet. So the father of the bride hates this guy. He was just pissed off the entire wedding. Both the bride and groom get beyond drunk at the wedding and he's dry jumping her on the dance floor. Father of the bride and groom get into a fight and the dad leaves. Damn wedding was Tinkerbell themed.